The horse that won't load into a trailer isn't being stubborn. The horse that spooks at the same fence post every single day isn't being stupid. And the horse that seemed to have something figured out last Tuesday and now acts like it never happened, that's not a memory problem, that's a learning problem. Specifically, it's a problem with how the learning was built in the first place. Most of us were handed a set of assumptions about how horses learn before we ever asked whether those assumptions were true, and some of them aren't, not entirely, which matters more than it might sound, because the gap between what we think is happening in a training session and what's actually happening, that gap is where most of the frustration lives. Here's the thing that tends to restructure how people think about their horse. Horses don't learn behaviors, they learn associations. That distinction sounds subtle. It isn't. When a horse lifts its foot because you pick up its leg, it hasn't learned lift foot when asked. It's learned that a particular sensation, pressure in a particular place, predicts what comes next. Specifically, it predicts that the pressure stops when the foot comes up. The behavior isn't the thing being stored. The relationship between the cue and the consequence is the thing being stored. And if that relationship is unclear, delayed, or inconsistent, what gets stored is noise, anxiety mostly. This is where timing becomes almost uncomfortably important. Research in equine learning, and there's more of it than most people realize, consistently shows that horses operate on a reinforcement window of about 3 seconds, maybe less. The release of pressure, the click, the scratch behind the withers, whatever you're using as your reward signal, has to arrive within that window where the horse is connecting it to something else, something it did 2 seconds ago, something it's thinking about doing, something that has nothing to do with what you wanted. 3 seconds sounds like plenty of time. It isn't. Not when you're also managing a lead rope, watching your own feet, and trying to figure out what your horse is about to do with its head. Most people are running about 5 seconds behind, which means most horses are spending a significant portion of their training time confused about what they're actually being rewarded for. They're not failing. The feedback loop is failing them. Now, here's the part that tends to frustrate people when they first hear it. Horses don't generalize well. At all, really. A horse that has genuinely, solidly learned to stand quietly at the mounting block in your arena may have almost no understanding of stand quietly in a new location. The cue is the same. The behavior looks the same. But the context has changed, and for a horse, context is part of the cue. This isn't a quirk. It's actually a feature of how a prey animal's brain has to work. When your survival depends on reading your environment accurately, you can't afford to lump things together loosely. A rustle in the bushes that was nothing yesterday might be something today. The brain that survives is the one that notices differences, not similarities. Which means every time you move your training to a new location, or change the equipment, or change what you're wearing, or change the time of day, you're not starting from scratch, but you're starting from closer to scratch than it feels like you should be. And fighting that, getting frustrated by it, treating the horse as though it's being deliberately difficult, that's where a lot of trust quietly erodes. There's also something worth sitting with here. A horse that's anxious cannot learn. This isn't a philosophical position. Cortisol, the stress hormone, physically impairs the memory consolidation process. A horse in a state of arousal, whether that's fear or frustration or even just low-grade unease, is a horse whose brain is not in learning mode, it's in survival mode. And you can drill something into survival mode, technically. Flooding works in the narrow sense that the behavior can be produced, but what gets stored is the emotional experience surrounding that behavior, not the behavior itself. And that emotional residue doesn't go away cleanly. This is why horses that were trained through suppression, through enough pressure that they stopped offering resistance, often look fine until they don't. The behavior was there, the understanding wasn't, and at some point, something tips it.
The practical implication of this is maybe obvious once you see it. Shorter sessions, more breaks, letting the horse stand and process. This isn't being soft, it's how memory consolidation actually works. Sleep and rest are part of learning. A 20-minute session with genuine relaxation built in will stick better than an hour of relentless repetition. Most horses are overtrained and undertaught. There's also a thing called latent learning, which doesn't get talked about enough in horsemanship spaces. Horses observe and absorb information even when they're not being actively trained, even when nothing is being asked of them. A horse watching another horse load calmly into a trailer is learning something. A horse standing quietly at the gate while you work another horse is learning something. The brain doesn't switch off between sessions. It's always filing things, mostly the emotional texture of what it's experienced.
Which brings it back to something simple that's easy to underestimate. How you are when you're with your horse matters. Not in a mystical way, in a neurological one. Horses are extraordinarily sensitive readers of physiological state, heart rate, muscle tension, breath pattern, movement quality. They're picking up information about you constantly, and they're using it to predict what's about to happen. If you carry tension, your horse learns that your presence predicts tension. That's not a character judgment, it's pattern recognition. It's exactly what their brain is designed to do. The research on this is genuinely interesting. Horses can distinguish between photographs of happy and angry human faces, and they respond differently to each. They're not just reading body language in the moment, they're building models of the humans around them. That's a level of social cognition most people don't expect from a prey animal, and it reframes what a training relationship actually is. It's not instruction, it's coexistence with a being that's building a detailed picture of who you are. Some horses are easier to read than others, and some are more sensitive to their environment than others, and generalizing too hard here would be a mistake. There's real individual variation in equine learning profiles, just like there is in people. Some horses need more repetition, some shut down under pressure faster than others. Some are genuinely bold and curious in ways that make new situations easier. That variation is real and it matters, and any approach that flattens it is going to run into trouble somewhere. What doesn't vary much is the basic architecture. Horses learn through association. They're exquisitely sensitive to timing. They don't generalize easily, and they remember the emotional experience of an event long after they've forgotten the event itself. That last one is worth holding on to. The next time your horse is resistant or shut down or suddenly seems to have unlearned something it knew last week, before you reach for more pressure or a different bit or a longer session, it's worth asking what the emotional texture of the recent learning has been. Not what you taught, how it felt to be the horse learning it. That's not a soft question. It's probably the most practical one you can ask. Go watch your horse for 10 minutes tomorrow without asking it for anything. Just watch. Notice what it notices. Notice what it ignores. Notice when it relaxes and what it was doing right before it relaxed. You'll learn more about how your horse learns in 10 minutes of watching than you will from most training advice, including this.